Please join me in welcoming Randy Jewell to the stage, Distinguished Engineer and Chief Security Architect at Cisco.
You know, it's funny. I always thought as a presenter, the worst slot for me to get is like right there before drink time. But I'm realizing actually the scariest time is right after a break. You know, I don't know if you're going to choose the waffle or me. So thank you very much for coming back from break, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're all facing in the security world. And I don't need to go through disruption, right? Because we all know that that's going on all around us. Joel laid it out great in front of us. But it's funny that when everybody talks about disruption, they kind of forget about the disruptions that we go through in addition to all of these, which is all of the vulnerabilities, all of the attacks, all of the things that are going on, all the changes in the laws and the regulations, all of the new technologies that come out that we have to deal with over and above all the technology disruptions in general going on around us. And if that isn't enough, we look around and what do we see? We see mistakes and accidents happening all over the place. We see the rapid rise in breaches and information disclosures from 2009 to now has just been exploding, right? Yeah, sometimes it's because the organizations didn't have their act together on security, but sometimes it's because we thought we were doing well, and it turns out we weren't doing good enough. And of course, all our executives see this, and they all get nervous and worried, and so what do? They come running to us and say, hey, are we secure? How are you supposed to answer that? Well, I'll suggest that the first answer to that is to tell them they're asking the wrong question. And so one of the things that we've taken a look at is we approach it in a different way. For us, the question is, are we taking the right risks? If you look at the pace that we're moving at today and the pace that our company needs us to be at, it's not a risk-free journey that we're on as our companies. It's one in which we have to understand the risks we're taking. Are they the right ones? Is it appropriate for our company in the world and the environments and industries and regulations that we have to live by? Do we have the right people accountable for those risks? And so if we start opening it up and start looking at it from a risk perspective, it really frees us up on the security side to start saying, let's work on what's important and let's try to get our organization to understand what's important and try to make an organization securer, but understanding what risks they're taking. So for instance, if I use Cisco, probably a use case you're somewhat familiar with, but as you said, I've been at Cisco for over 20 years, and so we've seen a lot of these disruptions, right? We started as a router company. Then, oh my goodness, there's a switch coming. That's going to kill the router business, and Cisco's gone. We started building switches. But in that disruption, for us, it's kind of the same thing. We knew how when we built security products, where we built routers and switches, sheet metal, put it together, set it out there. We knew how to deal with that disruption. Same thing for a while, right? Oh, now we get into voice products. Sheet metal, we know how to secure that. We get into firewalls. We get into wireless access points. We think we got things going pretty well. We know how to deal with all these disruptions. We know how to keep the company innovating. Then 12 years ago, we acquired WebEx. And that's the time we all started going, oh, that's not a piece of hardware. That's not sheet metal. That's not, now what do we do? Oh, now all of a sudden I have this data center that you all are using interactively that has your data in my data center, and which my security processes now are in line with our revenue generation. If we make a mistake, we're paying by the minute, becomes a much different game. And that was kind of our wake-up call on our security team to start saying, we have to approach this problem differently. We have to look at it in a different way. We can't just keep doing things the same way we've always done. Which has been a good thing, because as you see, as we evolve, business models have changed, we've moved to the cloud. We now have 65 different offerings available to the public that are running in clouds. Totally different world than where I was 12 years ago. And so if we go back to kind of how we recast the question, are we taking the right risks, really helped allow us to refocus what we should be looking at. In fact, if you look at our mission statement, my InfoSec mission statement, it's simply securely enable Cisco. You don't see the word protect, you don't see the word defend. Those are all points of view that typically business leaders think of as slowing things down. But the reality is what our role is to say companies need to evolve and innovate and deal with the changing world around us. Our job and our role is to securely enable that. Those new business models, the new technology, all of those things, we have to securely enable. honestly, we don't have the right to say no. We can't tell the company. If we were to go and say no all the time, that could actually be life-threatening to the companies we're all working for. So how do we approach it to say, let's take a look at what is our mission, how do we securely enable the company? I think if you look at some of the fun facts, you've seen them on some of the other slides about Cisco. But to me, when I look at this, this really is about my attack surface. This is about what is it I need to be aware of in my company? What do I need to look at from devices, networks, applications, people, clouds, all of those sorts of things? And the first fundamental thing we have to do is have visibility into it. And so these numbers, to me, mean, do I know what all those are? Do I know who owns them? Do I know what the security posture of all those things are? Do I know who's accountable for what's running on that? And to me, that's what visibility is all about. How do I know, how do I understand that every device, every person, every application is doing what it should, or at least we can turn to the people who are accountable for it and make sure we've itemized and understood the risks that we have going on with it. The side effect of that is this is kind of a day in the life for me. 47 terabytes of traffic generating over 1 trillion security events every day from about 20 plus different data sources. And this is kind of the control side of the equation. We talk about visibility and control a lot inside of Cisco. I have to see what I need to protect and defend, and then I have a set of controls that I need to know if they're being followed or if they're being able to represent the right level of risk that we're trying to adhere to within the company. The key to a lot of this, and especially for us, is getting this telemetry in as fast as we possibly can. Like I said, we have 200 data feeds coming in, 20 data feeds coming in, and we try to work on those as near real time as we possibly can. Because I think I haven't seen the most current ones, but last time I was looking at it, it was like the industry averages somewhere around 100 days to detect vulnerabilities in their environment on average. 100 days. Imagine all the things that could go on in those 100 days when something's running around that you're not aware of in your environment, right? By focusing on how we do our incident management and trimming it down, we get to the point where our average now is about 3 to 6 hours for our mean time to detect within the company. So that's awesome, and that gives us a real leg up, because if we can get and see things that are going on, see the incidents happen quickly, that means I can remediate them quicker. But even then, we have a lot of automated tools, a lot of automated processes to make that happen, but it still ends up, for us at least, turning into, I probably shouldn't share this, but it turns into about 22 incidents a day that it requires one of our analysts or investigators to go and deal with. And so you can see, to go ahead and get down from 1 trillion events down to 22 incidents a day takes a lot of work, a lot of process, a lot of automation, and actually it's a lot more than just technology. It's a lot of different pieces that have to go together to get us there. Okay, so how have we gone about getting ourselves there? Maybe oversimplified. People, process, and technology, the same main things that we focus on. Everything we do has to do to encompass all of those different pieces. That's kind of the core foundation that we look at it. From the people side, I would argue today, I know you all, me included, are the smartest people in security there are in the world. We all have the best, most talented staffs. We've had a budget that's allowed us to buy the best tools available everywhere. But I'd argue that's not enough. At this point in where we are in the evolution of how we need to securely enable a company, we need every single one of our employees to be a participant, to know that they have a role in it, to understand that they are part of the security team in all essential ways. And so there's a lot of time we spend in efforts trying to make sure that everybody understands that, because I can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone anymore. On the technology side, I think we're probably, by the way, yes, you all know I work for Cisco because I'm standing up here, but I am not obligated to be a Cisco-only shop, right? My mission is to securely enable Cisco. I have a bunch of Cisco stuff. Stuff I've bought from other vendors. I've had stuff I've had to build myself. So a lot like you all probably, right? Very similar environments that we have. But that complexity we've built over the years is actually getting to the point where it's actually getting in my way. And so one of the key things as we start looking at new technologies, as I bring them into my organization, as we look at it, is how can I operationalize that and make that effective? How can I integrate that in with the rest of the tool sets I have? Because frankly, if I get a new threat indicator, I don't have a week to go ahead and get it rolled out across all my controls across the company. I need it to happen faster than I can do it. I need it to happen automatically. And so a lot of what we look at now is how am I going to integrate in any technology, any controls that I put in place into my environment so that I can find the incidents I need as quick as possible and know what to do when I have an incident so that I know how to act on that. Process, like I said, is one of those things that you need to be able to adapt to when you have a process. You know, it's kind of funny, actually. So when I was coming here, whatever day that was, Sunday, it's kind of blurring all together. I always have my process when I go to the airport, and you had to go through security, and because you got to go and take all your stuff out of your bag. So I'm good if it's automatic, and I just kind of do it. So I take my jacket and clothing off first. That goes in the first little bin. Then I put down my backpack. Then I put all my electronics that came out of my backpack, and then I put my suitcase. Because that way when it rolls out, put my clothes on, open up the backpack, shove the stuff in, grab my suitcase, and I'm off, right? I don't know what happened, but it was really, really early when I was getting on the plane on Sunday or Saturday. And for whatever reason, the travel agent or the security official decided to rearrange my stuff. Don't know why, but so then it comes out the other end. Get my clothes on, put the stuff in the bag, grab my stuff, run. So I'm heading down to the terminal, down to my gate. I'm about 4 or 5 meters down that movable sidewalk. Oh, I don't have my suitcase. Turn around, go back. You'd be surprised how fast those movable sidewalks are moving when you need to go the other way. And there's people on them just looking at you like you're crazy. But I'm trying to scramble back and get back over there and get back to the TSA. But it's that adjustment in process, right? I was thinking about it, it's like, oh man, we have to have these processes, and they're great because it allows me 99.9% of the time to get through the airport without any incident. But then when something happens and something goes wrong, you have to be able to be adjusting and get back to it. Okay, so people, process, and technology is awesome, but really, the ultimate goal that I have with this is to actually weave that into the fabric of the company. So it can't be just people, process, technology, something Randy talks about, but how do you actually then change the culture of your company such that everybody understands that's just part of their job? That they don't have to go read some policy document, they don't have to go ask somebody what to do, but really the ultimate goal we're trying to get to is how do we get a security culture where everybody just knows what to do? It's kind of funny. So I'm an engineer. I loved all my engineering classes. Well, not differential equations. Let's not talk about that one. But I loved all my engineering classes, but I never really understood all those other liberal arts classes they made me take. I mean, come on. I'm an engineer. Sociology? Psychology? Why do I need to take those classes, right? But the funny part is I probably spend now more of my time using what I learned in those times than I do my engineering skills. I mean, it's kind of something we can do to prop up technology, but to try to motivate, in my case, a workforce of about 125,000 members to understand how should we react when we get an email with a YouTube video saying, look at these kitty cats. Don't want them always to click, but how do we get that culture changed? And so that's really what our ultimate objective is. So we have a framework that we kind of work around. And our framework has traditionally been kind of technology focused. What is the stack we need to build? We work on the endpoints, we worked on the perimeters, had probably a squishy middle, but it was the traditional way. And then once we started moving to the cloud, like the WebExes and the other apps we have, realizing that none of that held up anymore, looking at it from a risk point of view, saying, okay, we need to be adjustable, we need to look at this a different way, we need to talk about risks, really caused us to change the way we were doing a lot of our work. So for instance, in this picture, we actually start in the middle there now. And the first step for us now is understanding the threat landscape. So what are our critical assets? Why might somebody want them? Who might want them? How might they want to get to them? And understanding that allows us to start placing a risk lens on it to say, is that where I should be investing my time and my money? And of course, we have laws and regulations that we all have to comply to for the businesses we're working on and the countries we work in. Technology is ever changing, customer requirements are ever changing, and even the risk appetite of the company is ever changing. But bringing all those things together is really our starting point now. It's not a technology starting point anymore. And so from there, we basically start writing policies and standards, which in many ways is our way of capturing what's the appropriate level of risk in all of these areas. Knowing what's critical to us, knowing what's important to us, knowing the regulatory environments, knowing our risk appetite of the company, what's the right level of risk? And we can start codifying that through policies and standards. And then from there, we can start working on technology implementations, process implementations, education, awareness with the people. And up here, you can kind of see the main ways we look at the security architecture, basically in the 6 blocks of network, identity, devices, data, applications, and then monitoring and response. And so those become our focal areas as we address the problem. But it's not about technology first. It's about being able to put together an integrated approach so that we have a good threat defense for the threats that are real to us, for the threats that represent the ones that are the biggest risk to the enterprise. So once we understand what those are and we can build things, like I said, really the key for us is also operationalizing it, making sure that we can actually turn it into something real, make sure it's actually effective. Starting at the bottom, understanding the threat landscape and skills, which we just said are critical assets, people, processing, technology, focus on everything we do. Working really, really closely with our IT organization and with our business organizations and being partners in all of those spaces. I don't think I said it, but actually in Cisco, our security organization is not directly part of our IT organization. It stands out next to it. And so we have a good working relationship where we really get in with every team in IT to partner with them, every one of our business functions to partner with them so that we can understand what are the requirements, where do we need to go, how do we drive the practices and policies that we need, not just at an information security level, but at a business process level, a way we do our work. Once we have a good understanding of that, categorization of all our risks, then it's really about instrumentation. That's when we start building things. Get those controls in place, understand what they are, where they need to be, and put them together. But that's not good enough, right? That doesn't do the job just having controls in place. It's how do I make sure that I'm getting the telemetry out of them? How do I make sure I get the analytics? How do I make sure I get all of the security events that are coming from those devices so that I can respond as quick as I possibly can? And then lastly, as we work on focusing on getting everything kind of feeling like it's just woven into the company, we actually focus a little bit on our security metrics. Now, sure, I put out security metrics from the security organization, but what I really strive to do is work and partner with all our business leaders to say, you recognize that security is part of your role. How do we represent that in the key metrics of your organization? And so we'll have business organizations that when they have their quarterly roll-up, without me in the room, are representing security as one of the things that they measure themselves on, which is a huge win when we get to that place, because I can go ahead and say, the organization's doing the right thing, it's kind of healing itself, it's understanding the importance of the environment that we have today, and going ahead and doing it on its own. Well, not on its own, never is on its own. The last piece of this that we really want to focus on is getting the governance right. So we find, you have to find a governance model. That's a picture of ours. You don't need to read all the details because you're going to find one that works for you. You're going to find one that matches the culture and the business goals and objectives of your organization. And, it's pretty disparate. Cisco's pretty diverse. We got a lot of different business units. And so it's not necessarily that I'm going to be able to come up with one governance model that's going to work for the entire organization. But what I work for is making sure that it's operational and it can work. Make sure you don't kind of have the old fox watching the hen house sort of situation. So make sure we have segregation of duties, and we'll find a way to make that process work within each of the different business organizations that we have. Like I said, that picture there happens to be ours. The red boxes are our organization, the Security and Trust Organization. And so we have various roles in there. But there's also various partnerships with the senior leaderships, our CEO staff, with the board of directors, the auditors, with the audit committees. And so there's a lot of different staff members and teams that are involved in this. But you need to find the one that's right for you, because there's a certain amount of this that if I don't get it right, if we can't implement it effectively and see that we're implementing it effectively, you can lose a lot of the impact of what your program's trying to do. When I talk about weaving it into the team, weaving it into the company, if you can find a way to attach security as being part of the core values of the company, part of the core mission of what it is your organization's trying to do, that's a huge win. Now, I've been very fortunate that when Chuck Robbins came in as CEO, he understood security. In fact, one of the first things he did was add secure to the mission statement of the company. So you can see it on there. The Cisco's mission is now we securely connect everything to make anything possible. But that was a huge, powerful statement, right? When it's coming from the CEO, from a security point of view, to say, hey, every employee of the organization, securely. That's part of the company mission statement. And it's awesome. It's just like Ashley was saying yesterday, right? It doesn't, the trickle down, what was it, a trickle down of all the cascading to-dos and tasks? No, this is the trickle down of meaning, right? The meaning of the company and the mission is about security and how to securely connect. We do also spend a lot of time on communication. I mean, it's great to have Chuck saying it, and if he was here, I would say that was awesome. But we also have to communicate over and over and over again to everybody. So we actually, even within our own organization, have our own little internal marketing team. So back to that sociology and communication thing, it's how do we reach everybody in the company to understand what's going on in today's threat climate? How do we get them to understand that the role that they have to play? I mean, like I said, I mean, if your job is to work with sensitive data or PII data, you have to know what to do with it. You have to know, I'm just not going to leave it on the desk somewhere or leave it on the printer. How do we get to the point where we can make sure that all of that works well? So frequent communications inside of the company, targeted at specific groups and specific roles, is a constant reminder and getting to the point where they can feel good about it. So it's great that we have all this stuff in place. But the other reality of all this is stuff's going to happen, right? So the other part of this is making sure we think through not just how to prevent or how to control or how to put these things in place, but what are you going to do when something slips through? Because it's inevitable. It will happen. It does. Well, in my case, it happens 22 times a day. And so the way we take an approach to this is kind of twofold. First is try to get as much data as we possibly can in. So we get real-time streams for about 20 different systems, 20 plus systems that all go into one centralized repository. So I can start mining it, I can start finding correlations. As attacks and threats in our environments become more sophisticated, I have to look 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different places to be able to determine whether or not something that's going on in the environment is appropriate or not. So being able to bring all that stuff back together is huge. Great, you bring it all together. The question is, what are you going to do? And so we take this approach, we call it threat-based log management, which is basically understanding our threats, as I was explaining earlier. First thing, what are we trying to protect? Answer that question. Is it customer data? Is it a system? Is it a building? Is it an assembly line? Whatever it ends up being, but understanding what is it we're trying to protect. Second step, what are the threats against that particular asset? So maybe if it's customer data or some sort of data, it might be exfiltration, it might be an employee making a mistake, it might be a breach from a repository. So trying to enumerate all the different threats to that particular asset you have, then you have to say, okay, great, those are great threats and that stuff could happen. How am I going to know? Right? So how do we detect all of these different particular scenarios and walk through what logs, what tools, what processes, what controls, what is it we might need to put in place so we can say, this is happening, it's not what we want to happen. And then finally, what are you going to do when you see that? And so making sure that we have a definitive set of responses so we know. And we want to know those up in front so that if we do detect that happening, we can act quickly, right? So we don't want to know, hey, we just saw this happening, and let's go figure it out. What do we do? So we try to work all that out, and that's how we were able to get our quick response. So we put all these scenarios together with these 4 buckets into what we call plays in a playbook. And so last time I looked, it was about a little over 425 different plays that enumerate different things we're trying to protect, the threats, the detection mechanisms, and the response plans, so that if any of those things get triggered, we know what to do at the time. Boom. Shows up on one of our analyst screens, play 260, and it says right there, here's why this play ran, here's what we were looking for, here's what we saw, here's what you need to do. And so our investigative team can jump on it real quick, hop right to it, and get right there. Make sense? Waffles kicking in? Just checking. Now, once you get to the place where you have all this stuff together and you have that risk-based approach, it allows you to have the flexibility to do what's right for your business. Like if I think about Cisco, we showed all the stats earlier, how big we are and everything, and I'm sure several of you out here have the exact same stats, maybe bigger, maybe smaller. But matching it to the risk appetite of the company and matching it to the environment that we work in is really difficult. I think at one level, if I think about ourselves, it's kind of a spectrum of perceptions, right? So at one level, we're a security company. So at one level, you all think I got this figured out. I don't. But you all think I have it figured out. So we have to represent and be safe and secure and represent that way. the same time, if you look at the history of Cisco, it was started essentially out of university research labs, and we have a culture inside, especially in our engineering organization, of free flow of information. Everything should be shared. We should have access to everything. And so we have to balance that out. Even to the point, I'll give you an example. Can I see people? Okay, no throwing anything. But we give everybody in the company local administrative access to their laptops. Does anybody else here do that? Wow, that's more hands than I thought, because I heard the gasps when I said it, and I figured I'm probably going to start exiting and leaving the room now when I say that. But that's the risk trade-off we have to take. If that's the environment if that's the environment engineering needs to have and the culture that they want to have to be able to be innovative, we have to put other processes and other controls in place. And so the exercise becomes one then of not going, you're crazy, no way are we giving you administrative access rights. We can say, okay, let me take a deep breath. Now, let's talk about the risks that represents. Let's talk about the benefits. Why do we need that? What are we trying to accomplish in engineering? Why do we need, okay, what other controls can I put in place? Okay, what are the threats? How do I protect it and defend it and protect it? And so we can walk through that scenario now and recognize that we can be flexible pretty much to most things that come our way. And I'll say most, it's definitely not all. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So if we put all this together, it's the point now where we're going to test the model a little bit. And so one of the things that it's been good for us when we take a threat-based approach is I can now start considering and thinking about what's coming next and what's in the future. And it doesn't scare me nearly as much as it used to. I mean, it's very scary, but it's something that I think we have now the muscle that says, I know what to do when things change. And so if we look at what's coming, and I'll just throw some things out there, just things that are in our mind. I'm sure you guys have a lot of other things in your mind about what you're worried about, what's coming next. But the first thing we have to look at is just who our adversary is. And if you're still picturing that a hacker is some young person in a hoodie, you couldn't be further from the truth anymore. Right? Our adversaries, unfortunately, have realized that cybercrime is very profitable. And the reality is, the way to approach it and look at it is, it's a fully monetized, fully funded industry that's making a lot of money and growing really fast. And if we know that there's a lot of money in there, they've learned how to invest, they've learned how to share practices, they've learned how to do research, and they've basically been perfecting and crafting their trade significantly in the last couple of years. And so that's one of the things we have to worry about and watch out for. But again, if we kind of get ourselves in the mental state of our job is to securely enable, our job is to understand risks, understand what's an appropriate level risk for us, and have an organization that's getting in alignment with that, not just your security organization, but a company that's getting in line with that, then you can look at some of these changing threats and the way our adversaries are changing over time and not be quite as scared as one might be, because it's not unsolvable. It's not this huge mountain we have to climb over. Now, I can't predict the future, and I don't know what's coming. None of us can. But if I were to put the telescope out and try to look out in the future and just try to tell you a little bit of a couple of the things that we're thinking about that's on our mind about what's next, I'll just throw a few out kind of quick. First one is pervasive encryption. We know there's debates about encryption everywhere, right? It's a hot topic in politics as well as technology. But I'd be willing to bet every single one of you has a security control or process in place that relies on you being able to inspect and see what's actually happening. What happens if that goes away? Right? So there you go. Talk about a threat. Let's take a look at it. Let's start talking about where that might impact some of our assets. Let's talk about what can we do about it and how to detect it. So kind of going through the risk-based approach of, all right, we're going to need a new set of controls. We're going to need a new approach because, well, frankly, end-to-end encryption is probably going to happen, right? And we're going to have to be able to understand that. Next one that we spend some time on is thinking about applications. And so applications end up being one of the weakest points right now, right? And as more and more of our company becomes the app, and many, many companies are all about the app, we have to recognize that most of the data breaches, well, 30% of the data breaches are due to just web attacks. And the worst part is about 2/3 of that is all with known vulnerabilities. And so here we have this environment where as security professionals, we're going, wait a minute, how does this happen over and over again, and how am I going to influence the company to kind of get past this? Because we have to get to the point where these things don't just keep happening over and over again. And what about the fact that some of the surveys now are saying that many of the new applications are almost 70 or 70% or more open source code? Anybody know what's in that stuff? I don't. So how do we go ahead and say, well, if that represents a majority of our code base and a majority of the capabilities of our application, we need to find a way to go ahead and figure that out. And so this is, I took a slide out. So that's where we want to go with that, is being able to understand how do we get the application developers to think about that stuff and consider it. Everybody talks about the cloud. It's this thing, one thing out there. So the biggest thing that we've noticed around the cloud is there's no such thing as the cloud. It's a whole bunch of clouds. It's a sky full of clouds. And so as much as we would like to say, hey, let's pick a vendor, let's go with Cloud A, the reality is even inside of Cisco, we use every single cloud vendor out there. We have workloads running on Amazon, Google, Azure, some of our own home-built clouds out there and IaaS providers. And so we've got all of these clouds out there. And so one of the things is we have to recognize it's inevitable, or that's where many of our workloads are going to work, either whether it's our product that we're offering or whether it's our internal workloads, and figuring out how to scale ourselves and how to make sure that everything we do, we don't put ourselves in a box of we're using vendor A. No, you're probably not. You're going to probably be using lots and lots of vendors. And the same thing's true on the clouds we consume, meaning like SaaS providers that you're using to run the operations of your company. More and more of our workloads are going there, so that's more and more of a way we have to shift our practices. But again, for us at least, when we look at what are the risks, let's measure that risk, it makes it a little less scary. It makes it a little less worrisome about what's really going to happen. The other one I worry about is I think a lot of the attacks and a lot of the things that are going on are becoming more destructive. And if I look at data, I think the thing that we're all going to find, and I don't want to pick a timeline because it's probably going to be sooner than I think, we all are pretty good at keeping people from stealing data or keeping people from locking our data, deleting it, ransomware and that sort of stuff. But how many of us have started thinking about, well, what happens if they just change your data, maybe for other means? What happens if my medical provider changes my blood type? What happens when I go to the hospital then, right? So I think there's another form of this coming along where it's going to be modification of data for another purpose. The purpose wasn't necessarily to damage your organization directly, but we'll also have interruption of operations probably being more prevalent, as well as product taint and those sorts of things. Those are the things I think we really have to start worried about. We're just starting to see the tip of that, but that's something we have to go through and evaluate. And again, under the lens of risk, we can prioritize that appropriate in the company and see where we need to go with that. All right. What happens, I think we all make an assumption, at least we've been making the assumption, that all our users are human. What if that's not the case? How do we interact differently? How do our systems need to interact differently? And that's maybe the interaction. We have a lot of bots doing things for us automatically now. How do we keep track of them? How do we know how to control them? How do we interact with them? Same way, machine learning. Had to say at least one buzzword, right, to be a real presentation. AI, machine learning, okay. But as we deploy more and more of these technologies, there's more and more things that we don't really understand from a security point of view. So what happens when your machine learning learns a skill you didn't intend it to learn? How do you know that even happened? How do you know when it happens? I don't know, anybody seen the movie Ex Machina? Pretty cool movie. It's a B science fiction, B-rated movie, but it's awesome. It'll get you thinking about it, right? And it's about the Turing test for those of you who know it, but watch that movie if you haven't seen it. It'll get you thinking about this in a much different way about where is that boundary between interactions, where is that boundary between machine learning and understanding what the machine is doing and is it doing it correctly? Kind of get you thinking. Here's the other shift I think that we're realizing we're encountering now, which is that as things become more and more distributed, we have to find a way to centrally manage it better, because I can't put everything in one nice small little box anymore. It's everywhere. And so if it's everywhere and all over the place, I need to have a way to make sure I manage that centrally still. But the real thing for that is going to be at the pace and speed of things moving these days, we're going to find ourselves in a mode of not necessarily always blocking and preventing. We're going to find ourselves transitioning more to being after the fact. It's not going to be in line all as much as it is anymore. It's going to be a bunch of cyber scientists that are going to do forensics much more than it is about, oh, this block went off, let's stop that, good job. So we're going to have to shift from a defense to a react mechanism in many ways, and I think that's a scary thing for a lot of organizations, saying, wait a minute, you're telling me you're not going to prevent this, but you're going to tell me after the fact that it happened? But this goes back to where we're getting. It's going to be so complex and so difficult that in many cases, building that muscle to be able to respond and detect on something extremely quickly is what is going to be the important piece, because I'm going to find incidents and I'm going to need to respond and react quickly. And then the last one here is we all have to recognize we're not going to be perfect, right? And so I definitely encourage you, and we've been going through things about what happens when, or what happens if. I'll be more optimistic. What happens if? You know, what happens if you get that pager, that phone call that says, hey, 95% of all of our workforce's laptops have just been bricked. What are you going to do? What happens if your whole AD and all your identity management system just got erased? Any thoughts on how to take care of that one? Or what happens if, hey, I'm good, all my stuff's in the cloud? Well, yeah, what happens if you can't get to any of those clouds anymore? Thought the cloud would keep us not having to worry about it, right? So work through some of the scenarios. Even if you don't have the defenses in place today, knowing what those threats are, knowing how to understand and categorize the risk level of those threats and what they mean to you is going to help starting get you prepared. I mean, maybe the best you can do is a tabletop exercise to say, what are we going to do if this happens? And by the way, all three of those have happened in the last year. You can probably maybe recognize the companies. I'm not going to call anybody out. But that's all these have happened. And in all of those three cases, everybody went, oh, that's new. Hadn't thought about that one. And their reaction time and their response time is much slower, and it took them quite a while in some cases, weeks and months to recover from some of these. So think it through. Try to explore it. Now, it's too easy to end a security talk on a downer, right? It's really easy to scare everybody, and it's like we're all going, oh, thanks, Randy. Didn't think about that. Now you're killing me. But I'd like to say you should actually feel very empowered by this, because really, if you're taking a risk-based approach and you're reaching out to your entire organization and getting security in it, what you're going to find is actually your role is extremely important. Your role is key to your company being successful. Securely enabling your company, because their company is going to do its business, but its success is going to be very much based on how well they do it, how well they handle security, compliance, regulation, certification. That's our role. Taking a risk-based approach puts us at that table, seated at the table, sitting with all our business partners, helping guide them to how to successfully take the business to the next stage. Now, I've shared a bunch of I actually didn't get to all these because I figured I'd run out of time, and I got, 1 minute left, so I'm doing pretty good. But shared about the top 10 different things that we use. Hopefully, these are useful to you. Hopefully, there's some good insights in here from all of you. I'm sure all of you have others that I haven't covered. And like you, I'm here actually to hear to learn, just like you are, not just to be on the stage talking to all of you. So I definitely would love to hear from some of you what's working for you guys, either now or throughout the course of the day. I'll be around and I'll be wherever we need to be, but I'd love to continue this conversation and learn what's working from you as well. All right? Feel empowered? Let's go make it happen, right? Let's securely enable our companies. Cool. All right, well, thank you very much.